LaxFactor podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode 179 of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast. I'm your host, Ted Hoost, and today we're going to talk about a bunch of guys that will need to step up for their teams or that are expected to murk shit, as we say here, in the 2022 season. A lot of these guys are just going to be known quantities. Some of them are going to be surprises, not necessarily surprises, but guys that might not be on everybody's radar. So we'll get into it here. Before I do, as always, you can go to laxfactor.com. Support us. You can get swag, t-shirts, hats, all sorts of crap there. But you can also just like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're a YouTube watcher. If you are listening audio only, or if you're a Spotify listener or watcher, just share the podcast with everybody. That's all we ask. And I'm not going to waste your time anymore, and we are going to get right back in it. So today, I'm going to end up talking about Duke, Maryland, Syracuse, Penn, Cornell, Loyola, and I'll just go through a few players here that are on my radar. Part of my prep for the season is going through and trying to figure out who the hell is coming back, and that's one of the more important things to do is just figure out first who's coming back, especially with the COVID crap. So with Duke, I haven't talked about them a lot yet here this off season, so we'll talk about the first guy that's going to be expected to do big things this 2022 season, and it's going to be Brennan O'Neill at Duke. The dude's an absolute animal, beast attackman, lefty finisher, but more importantly, he can do everything. Dodge, he can create his own offense, he can create offense for other people. He is just a true finisher, has an absolute cannon on him, but also incredible placement, touch on the rock as he's shooting the ball. So we look at his stats from last year. 17 games played, started 16 of them, 45-10 as a freshman, 36.6 shooting percentage. As I always say, expect that to go down in his sophomore season, mostly just due to getting more attention overall. But he does have help. And I've heard a lot of people talking about, well, Duke has lost Michael Sowers and JT Giles Harris, and, woe is me, because Virginia didn't lose a whole lot, and Duke apparently did because they lost their best attackman. But don't front on the fact that this guy here, Brennan O'Neill, he can absolutely take over for this team and he was incredible last year with Sowers' help. He's going to only increase his production this year. He fits well into this system. He's an easy player to build an offense around, and Duke has a lot of guys that are going to be able to help him. So let's look at the next guy. This guy's back. And honestly, I wasn't sure. It's so automatic and it's so ingrained in my DNA to just know that, hey, a guy's a senior, he's gone. He's played 4 years, he's gone. Nakai Montgomery was one of those guys that I just wasn't on my radar because I just assumed, well, he's going to be gone. He's not. I like that little Doge coin action there on his helmet. Dogecoin is a crap coin, though. Don't buy Dogecoin. It's a piece of crap crypto. But anyway, Nakai Montgomery being back to anchor that midfield as a senior leader, had a great season last year, 14-15 on the year. I got that wrong. 15-22 on the year, 37 points. The biggest place that I thought he improved that anyone could see was just as a creator of offense for other people. We knew he could get to the rock. We knew he could finish. I didn't always like his shot selection, especially this season here, the 2019 season. He improved that in the shortened season, but we didn't get enough to really see what happened. So we see his evolution as a player by his senior year at Duke. And 15 goals, 22 assists, an excellent shooting percentage. Got his shots on cage, which I liked. Didn't turn the ball over a ton, considering how much he carried the ball. So overall, I'm a big fan of Nakai Montgomery. I was a big fan of his game last year, especially as a facilitator of that offense, and that's only going to continue. I think he'll be looked upon to put up more goals in this season as well, but they have finishers all over the field. The next guy I'm going to talk about is going to be one of Nakai's favorite targets, I would presume, because they have two lefty finishers here at Duke now, and they got to figure out how to use them, and I think you'll end up seeing them rolling Dyson Williams up off that left side high. I think he'll run a lot of two-man games with midfielders. I think they'll do that probably with O'Neill as well. But look for Dyson Williams to have another really big season. If we look at his stats, he had a monster season as a freshman. I'd call that a breakout season as a freshman, 30 points. Not so much last year. Got lost in the shuffle a little bit last year with some of the big additions like Sowers and O'Neal. So he didn't find his place, but in 2021, he was one of their best players, and they just happened to add two incredible players in O'Neal and Sowers last year. So he had to kind of figure out how to make that play. Only started 8 games out of the 15, but make no mistake, this kid is a serious finisher. He can kind of do it all as well. He's not going to be a huge dodger, but he's capable of getting to the rack if he has to as well, especially as that 2 dodger. You know, O'Neal goes to the goal, draws a slide, hits Williams on the backside, and Williams is capable of 2 4-step dropping into a shot somehow. So watch for Williams for sure to have a big season. He's going to be able to help out Montgomery and O'Neal a great deal. I figure he's going to easily eclipse 30 points in this upcoming season, I would hope. Another Hill Academy product here. You're just going to see a bunch of Hill Academy guys as we're talking today, but he's big. Now here's someone who's kind of gone under the radar this year, but Sean Lully, graduate student from Penn. Penn has bled talent since the COVID season, and they've lost guys to other programs, and those guys have all done well. Watch for Sean Lully to do big things here at Duke. If we look at his stats while he was at Penn, we didn't get to see him play either of these 2 seasons really, but you look at here, 2019, 36 points. You know, that's a solid season, and that would be a huge pickup at any point. But look at this 2020 season, the first 5 games of 2020, 14 goals, 16 assists for 30 points across just 5 games. This kid, he's going to be big for Duke here, I think. And I think he's one of the reasons where it's just like, okay, they lost Sowers, but you look at what they retained, which is huge, because they didn't just retain good players. They retained good players that now all have another year of experience under their belts. And then they add guys like Lully here. Now, a big question mark, another thing you hear people say is, well, they lost talent on the defensive side of the ball. How are they going to be? They get Kenny Brower back. I'd make the argument that Brower at points last year was their best defender, their best cover guy, I believe. I don't think that's a bold claim saying that Brower was their best cover guy. I think that's pretty well known, but not on a ton of people's radar. Took 11 balls away from people, stole some candy last year. Did turn the ball over a little bit here. That's high in the clearing game, but 21 ground balls. Overall, Brower will be a huge returner on this defense and will be big. Another guy that played big last year, Tyler Carpenter, not the best of actual on-ball defenders, but he takes the ball away from people as a long stick midfielder. I believe he might have even got time last year at close defense. I can't remember now as I'm saying it, but I know that you always heard Carpenter's name being called on the telecast because he's kind of everywhere. Put up 3 points, 2 goals, and a helper. So even if you're not a huge fan of Tyler Carpenter in terms of his defensive covering, you know, his prowess as an actual defender covering guys, he's going to get into the mix. He's going to mix it up. You're going to hear his name on the telecast for sure, so expect him to do big things. And then a very important guy here for Duke, because the face-off guys are going to be important for everybody in the ACC, is Jake Naso. Naso had what you would once again call this a breakout season. 62.9% from the faceoff dot. That was huge. 133 GBs, 14 turnovers, but faceoff guys, you're going to have that. Put up 5 points also. I like this guy almost as much as I like PD fucking LaSala. So look for him to be big for Duke here in this upcoming season. He's going to need to be in the ACC because the ACC is full of absolute beasts. So as I was just doing my research for Duke, those were that first crop of guys that I was like, all right, hey, these guys are back. That's a solid core of returning players that all contributed at a high level last year that are going to help Duke do big things again in 2022. Next team I want to talk about is Maryland. And everybody's kind of like, hey, Maryland, they lost a lot. They lost a lot on defense. They lost Sowers Bernhardt. Sowers Bernhardt, by the way, has been tearing it up. For anybody who hasn't been paying attention, Sowers Bernhardt left Maryland to go play football at Ferris State. He then came back to Maryland when the D2 football season got nuked, came back to Maryland, played his 2021 season, messed around and won the Tewaaraton. Not a big deal, you know, kind of doing big things there. They did lose in the finals, but he had a good showing even in the finals. So a lot of people are like, oh, they lose Bernhardt. They lost some defenders. Nick Grill among them. But listen, The new number one in Maryland, Logan Wisnauskas. This kid can play. I mean, and I've said this over and over again, and people are going to get sick of hearing me saying it, but in that the COVID shortened season, the 2020 season, there were points in those first 4, 5, 6 games, however many games Maryland played, that it looked like Wisnauskas might have been their best player. So Wisnauskas taking up the number one. He kind of gets pegged as a finisher because he is a lefty sniper, but he's not just a finisher. The kid can dodge. He had a great goal in the playoffs where he was kind of diving up from the left on the ground, stuck it up top. I mean, the kid can go to the rack. But he is also a huge off-ball finisher, so look to him to do a lot more carrying this season, but he's going to do his thing too. Maryland's got enough guys, like the next guy I'm going to talk about, that can create for Wisnauskas and help him get some easy points, but Wisnauskas is totally capable of getting the difficult points as well. 41 and 31, that's huge. So he does everything, can distribute. I think that you're going to see those numbers stay pretty fair. A lot of times you'll end up seeing a guy when he has to step into the spotlight and be their goal scorer, you'll see those numbers get lopsided. I don't think you'll see that with him. His whole career, he's been feeding. This season was a little bit tighter here. 24 and 12 there. So, I mean, 41 and 31 last year. Expect that to go up into the 80s, 90s in this upcoming season. So Logan Wisnauskas is going to do a great job anchoring Maryland in their attack and wearing that number one jersey. A guy I love, because how can you not love a guy named Bubba? But we've got Bubba Fairman here for Maryland as well. He is back for a 5th year. It looks like an All-American last year. Big time midfielder here. He goes 19 and 7 on the season for 26 points. Terrible shooting percentage, 23.8. And actually, he's been terrible at shooting the rock over the last 2 years. So he will have to improve that, because when one of your best players, and Fairman's going to be one of their best 3 or 4 players overall, when your best players shoot that poorly, that is not a good thing for you. So he'll have to improve that a little bit. But takes care of the ball, does a little bit of everything. So, I mean, I just love Bubba Fairman. The leadership in the locker room is going to be huge. So you've got literally a 1-2 punch with Wisnauskas and Fairman, and they will be wearing number 1 and 2. So the pun was intended, as I kind of noticed that. But expect Bubba Fairman to have another huge season. Expect for his production to improve, especially without Bernhardt. Bernhardt carried the ball a lot, and Bernhardt put up a ton of points. So I expect of all the people that are going to see a point increase, I expect Fairman to see a really big bump in his overall production. Not like crazy, but in terms of a midfielder, I think you're going to see him in the area of the mid-30s most likely in terms of points. So that extra 10 points is going to be a big deal for him and his chance to play pro next year. Not talked about a lot, but transfer Johnathan Donville from Cornell. Kid can finish. So once again here, the only thing I'm not big on with Donville in this mix, if he were to end up, let's say, playing attack, is that he's an off-ball type of guy. But, I mean, you look at his stats at Cornell. I thought I had them up, but I lost them. But screw it. We've got Cornell's roster here. So let's just jump ahead. Let's put Cornell's stats in here. Individual, Johnathan Donville. Here we go. We're going to look at his full bio. You look at his career while he was running around the field playing midfield for Cornell. And 2 seasons that he got to play, the last 2 seasons totally nuked. But you look at this 2019 season, folks, actually both of them, 18 and 17, 20 and 14. So what Maryland gets in terms of adding Donville as a midfielder is going to be huge. Guy can finish. He can create and everything like that. But I think overall Maryland needs playmakers, and he fits that bill because he's a hybrid and can kind of do everything while he's running around on the field. I always mix Donville up whenever I'm talking about him with Piatelli. So let's ignore that I had talked about him being an off-ball attackman initially, because that was just my brain fart. But yeah, so that's a huge transfer for Maryland. And you saw that last year. Maryland got the Bucknell kid who ended up playing big minutes here, especially down towards the end of the season. I forget his name off the top of my head. What do you wear? 88 or some crap like that. So Maryland, once again, picking up just a under the radar kind of pickup by people who aren't really paying attention. But for anyone who is, Donville is one of the reasons that Maryland is not going to miss a beat at all, because that is a huge transfer. And it was a lot quieter this season in terms of the transfers. People weren't getting as excited as the previous season because we had Sowers and a bunch of guys moving. But just wait until you see the amount of talent that that Penn has bled when we get a little bit deeper down into here. But there's another Ivy League transfer, and Maryland's going to be reaping the benefits of that this year. In terms of speaking to their defense, like what's going to happen to them defensively, they're going to be fine. They've got Rahill back. He was huge last season. He's always been huge, though. But you look here, 17 caused turnovers last year, so that's going to be key. He'll help anchor that defense. And then you've got the do-it-all fellow Roman Puglise. He is going to get busy again, apparently, in 2022. 3 goals and an assist last year. I was hoping he was going to kind of put up like 6 to 7 points last year or whatnot, but you can't argue with his production overall. 27 ground balls, 4 caused turnovers. So Puglise, he's going to be a big deal for them. You get back down to the defense again in Geppert, long stick midfielder. He had a good season last year, forcing 17 turnovers and actually put up 5 points as well. So this kid can get up and down the field. So lots of good things for Maryland defensively. Makar back apparently as well. Let's see. Okay, so he was always coming back, but once again, another big defender. So it's one of those deals where you see the guys that they lose, and you're just like, well, how can that not hurt? Losing a guy like Grill, losing a guy like Bernhardt, and it does. But then you look at who they have coming back, and you're just like, oh my God, Maryland. As I've been doing my research here, Maryland was not a team I was talking about as being like one of my top 3 contenders. I had them kind of in my top 5. I figured they'd be somewhere between, somewhere in my top 6 in terms of chance to make it back to the Final Four and win. And Maryland by the time I'm done doing all my research, I may be really high on Maryland as one of my top 3 teams here. Cuse. Of course, we got to talk about Cuse. And one of the biggest question marks for Syracuse, it's the biggest question mark for Syracuse is on the defensive side of the ball. They were not a good defensive team last year, and one of the few bright spots was Brett Kennedy here. So he's going to have a big season for Syracuse defensively, and he's a long stick midfielder. I mean, that's where I want to see him play. He got stuck at times playing close D here and there, so I hope we see him get back to his getting up and down the field, putting up points. He put up 5 points in that kind of breakout sophomore season. I liked that. He puts up 6 points last year, so that was great to see him getting back to doing what he does, and that is getting upfield and making things happen. Forced 15 turnovers, so his numbers are going to have to be similar. I'd like to see him with Gate and company and trying, maybe if Syracuse pushes the ball a little more, maybe see his point total eke up into the 8 and 9 range. That would be a big deal for Syracuse. And then that turnover range, I'm not big on long stick midfielders taking away the ball. I'd prefer to just see them play defense more effectively. But if he can take away 15 pieces of candy from somebody again this upcoming season, that's going to be good stuff for Syracuse here. Offensively, Brendan Curry, he had one of the known quantities. He's obviously going to have a huge year. You see, he had 33 points as a sophomore, only 17 in that shortened season. But, you figure, I mean, what? Oh, shit. Yeah, that was only 5 games there. 28 last year. So the problem with Syracuse last year was that, I was never a big fan of how Desko played that first midfield line. I've always been a huge fan of Desko as a coach, as a developer of talent. Never been a big fan of how he subbed and used his best players offensively. And that started way back when he first took over and he had Mike Powell. I felt like when you had Mike Powell on your team, you had to give him the rock more. And I felt like there were too many possessions that the ball just didn't go through Powell, that Powell barely touched the ball. And so my dislike of how he used some of that best talent started back in those days. But then there were years where he developed kids that you wouldn't have expected to be All-American level players into legitimate All-American level players as well. So like I said, I'm a huge fan of Coach Desko as a coach. I did not like how he played that first line midfield over the last 3 years at Syracuse with Trimboli, Curry, and Dordevic. I felt like they should have been on the field a lot more than they were, especially because when your three of your best 4 players are at least for 3 of your best 4 offensive players are midfielders, you can't have them only playing half of a game or even 60% of a game. They've got to be on the field for, at least 2.5 out of 4 possessions or 5 possessions, if not 3 or 4 out of 5 possessions. And they just weren't. That second midfield line, I felt got way too much burn. Anyway, I don't think that's going to be a problem with Gate. I think Gate's going to be the guy that's going to feed the horses, and expect Curry's point production here to jump from this 28 points that he had in 2021. I expect for him to be in the area of 35, 40 points in 2022, not just because he's going to need to be, but because I think Gate's going to utilize them and keep them on the field a little bit more. So Curry is going to be a monster for the Cuse this year. Kid is athletic, has a great shot, shoots on the run as well as anybody. So Andy can play off ball a little bit. You see Syracuse run a little bit of motion in their offense, and all of those midfielders would get involved in that, Trimboli and Curry more specifically. So going to be huge. Going to have a big season. Obviously, everyone always hears about Tucker Dordevic, and once again, there's good reason. The kid's talented as hell. Great dodger. Once again, another great shooter on the run. Has an insane rollback. Great cutting ability. So expect Dordevic to do big things. There's a little bit of murmurs that he might see some time at attack. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be mad at it. I was calling for that to happen last year, knowing that Syracuse was going to have a little bit of a struggle trying to figure out who was going to be that third attackman. So I figured, why the hell not just put Dordevic down there? They had enough depth at midfield that it wouldn't have hurt their midfield that badly, and it would have put one of their most dynamic offensive players on the field more often. So I expect that there may be quite a bit of truth to that in terms of seeing him play some attack, and I would love it. But either way, expect Dordevic to just thrash people here in 2022. He'll be a big reason that Syracuse does well again. One of the most important players on this roster is going to be Jacob Fopp. Face-off guys are going to be huge for Syracuse, especially in the ACC, especially because defensively we have a new goalie in place, and we have a defense that did not play all that well together as a team last year. I think that defense, that core of defenders is going to be improved. It's just that now you're not going to have the All-American goalie sitting behind them. Now, that's not to say that whoever they put in cage doesn't just start tearing it up and play well, but Fopp can help alleviate a lot of the defensive problems by simply winning a boatload of draws. And I think that he'll have a good season as well. What did he finish here? By the end of the season, he was hanging in the area of 56.7% after kind of having a really good end to the year in 2020. Or actually not end of the year, but start to the year in 2020. So I'd like to see him improve upon these numbers. I'd like him to get into the 58 to 60% range if Syracuse is going to do real damage in the ACC. But as long as he can win more than half, that's going to help this defense stay off the field a little bit long. Not stay off the field, but they won't have the ball in their end of the field quite as often. I just had like a little quick little panic, like, oh crap, have I even been recording here? Do I have audio? I do, so it looks like we're good. Let's go deeper here. Nick Hapney, he is back as well. Transfer from Utah, right? Is Hapney the transfer from Utah? Yep, for the Utes. And he did all right last year. But what I think is going to happen is I think now that he's a returner, he's young, he's going to be one of the anchors on this D. I feel like he'll have a decent season in terms of statistically speaking. How'd he do last year? Let's see. Played in 7 games. I think he might have gotten injured. Actually, I'm not even sure what the hell I'm looking at here. Maybe he didn't play as much as I thought, but I know at the beginning of last year, I thought Hapney was going to do big things. And let's see what his bio says. Why the hell did he not play more? Started all 6 games in the shortened season for the East Coast ground balls. Yeah, I don't know what happened to him, but he's going to have to step up and play well for the Cuse, as is Nick DiPietro. And DiPietro, I believe, is back for sure. And he's going to have to also be a big cat. I mean, he's a big body anyway here. What do we got? 6'1", 236. So he's got a solid frame. Last year, 4 takeaways, started 8 games, played in 8 games. I believe he was battling injury as well last year too. So we're going to need for him to do big things. And that was one of the problems with the Syracuse defense is they were shuffling a lot of guys in and out, but I need these 2 guys to come back and play big lacrosse. So anyway, if we can get a good solid core of defenders and have them just play well together, if they can improve some of their off-ball problems, then that whatever goalie steps into play is going to have a much easier time. And I'm just hoping that bringing back some experience now, having guys that have been there that are coming back with 1 more year of experience under their belt, I'm hoping that helps. Let's talk about Penn. I've talked about this guy here ad nauseum, but it's because I'm a big fan of his. Sam Handley for Penn. Tewaaraton talk is what people are saying. This kid has not been on a field in a long time. As a freshman in 2019, playing midfield for Penn, one of the best midfielders in the country. It was him and Scanlon had big seasons. Scanlon for Loyola that year and Handley for Penn. And 61 points as a freshman It's just insane, absolutely insane to see that. So inside lacrosse, I forget who it was, if it was Kinnear or Foy or somebody was talking about at the practice. He was just showing that he could take over at any point when he wanted to and do so in a good way. He can feed the rock. He can score the rock. He can do a little bit of everything, scores man-up goals. Scored game-winning goals in that 2019 season as a freshman. Turned the ball over quite a bit, but he was a high-volume guy. You know, he put up quite a few shots, but a great shooting percentage there as a freshman. And this was his only game of 2020 against Maryland. He ended up having 3 goals, 2 assists, great shooting percentage, and ruptured his spleen in that game. So he didn't play again the rest of the 2020 season. I think Penn got 5 games in there. Sam Handley, even though Penn has bled talent, Sam Handley is one of the reasons that Penn is still going to be one of the best teams in the Ivy and probably one of the top 20 teams in the country. Dylan Gergar, I always forget how to pronounce his name, but I expect for his production to increase, and it will need to. But you see here in that shortened season, 23 points last year. In the one game they played, he went 7-2. Handley did not play in that one game that they played last year. So once again, they did bleed a bunch of guys here, and they lost some guys to other schools. But hey, he's going to be a big deal, and he's going to also help anchor that offense. And then we also have keeper Patrick Birkinshaw, transfer from Virginia. We didn't see a whole lot of him because he transferred and then he hasn't played. But he did start 5 games for him in that 2020 season. And I don't see what his save percentage was. It did not look great there. But I will say Penn plays a brutal start to their schedule. So maybe if I think about it here and I remember, I'll go back and we'll look at who he put that number up against. But I figure Birkinshaw in cage mixed with a bunch of returning defenders, that should be pretty solid. And I think that you'll see his save percentage above 50. I think he'll hit that magic number of 55%, I think, overall. For shits and giggles, let's look at their 2020 roster or schedule. All right, so this is who you sit there and you say, well, how good is he going to be with a 45% save percentage over the first 5 games? But if you look at who he played, Maryland, and they played them to a good game. Duke, and they played them to a good game. Penn State, offensive juggernaut. They lost in OT, and they beat Duke here. So that was a big deal. And then number 14, Villanova. They did beat St. Joseph. So you see, I mean, that was a brutal stretch for him. So as you look at what he was going to face beyond that, not that the Ivy League schedule is terrible, but I suspect he fared okay against St. Joseph's. He probably would have fared okay against Princeton, Cornell, Yale, Brown, Harvard. You know, you start getting down into these final 4 games here. Not that these teams aren't solid, but you like his chances a little bit better in terms of boosting that save percentage. So that's why I think that despite that rough-looking start in 2020, when he first started, after he transferred from Virginia to Penn, I think that wasn't speaking to the quality that this kid is going to put up here in 2022. So he'll be a big deal for Penn. And I haven't gone deep into Cornell yet, but I was sitting here thinking, Cornell, what the hell is Cornell going to do? And I had thought they lost a couple more guys than they did. And as I'm going through the roster, I end up seeing Michael Long in here. And remember that Michael Long had a really good season where was it? It was, well, this must be the shortened season, the 2020 season. And 11-8 in that shortened 2020 season. This is with Teat still running around on the field here. So little guy, I believe he is one of the wee folk, 5'10", 180, not that small. That's a fairly average size attackman. So anyway, expect for him to be a big deal here. I've heard that he looked good in the fall, I think it was, or at least I've heard people saying really nice things about him, and he did play well in 2020. So I expect for that to carry on. I didn't realize Piatelli was back for these guys on attack as well, and if you see his first 2 seasons, not bad. 26 points here in 2018, tore it up in 2019, 45 and 19. So Piatelli being back, he's going to need a little bit of help. He's going to need some help with some guys carrying the ball. But I believe in this season here, and I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure. But either way, I felt like he was going to carry the ball a little bit more, and maybe he'll do okay. Now I'm starting to ramble, and like I said, I always mix him up with Donville for some reason. So let's just stop talking about Piatelli now. But let's know, as long as Piatelli has help, I don't think you'll see him put up 64 points here in the 2022 season because they don't have Jeff Teat. You can't front on what Jeff Teat did to open Piatelli up. But I think they have enough talent around him that I would expect him to be in the area of 50 to 60 points, helping Cornell continue to be one of those top 3 teams in the Ivy. And then I've heard really good things so far about CJ Kirst. We got to talk about him just because his brothers both tore it up here last year, and he's just one of many Kirst brothers here. Let's see here. His 3 older brothers, Connor, Colin, and Cole, are all, well, at this point, they were all currently playing Division I lacrosse. Now we know that one of them at least is gone. So, I've heard good things so far. Apparently he looked good in the fall, so maybe he ends up getting some time and helping Cornell out. Now, these are all known quantities for Loyola, but why I'm talking about these 3 guys here for Loyola is because I think it's funny that they're all still there. Sham Safer. No shit. Sam Schaefer in cage. Streaky goalkeeper overall. He's always been, like last year, he was one of my, I thought he was going to have a really big season in cage for Loyola, and he didn't have a bad season, but he was a little bit streaky, and I think that hurt them overall. I think that if Schaefer can get himself in the area of 57%, then Loyola's just going to continue to be one of the better teams in the country. They're going to continue to be in the top 10 or right on the outside of that. They had kind of that storybook playoff run last year. Ended up losing to Duke in the quarterfinals is who it was. They lost to Duke in OT after beating, who'd they beat in that first round? After beating Denver 14-13. They lost to Duke in OT 10-9. So Loyola just put it together at the right time last year. Their problem last year was that, Schaefer, a little bit inconsistent, but he was still solid and he had a good playoff run. Kevin Lindley and Aidan Olmstead, the 2 guys I'm going to talk about next. I had said at the beginning of the year, those 2 guys were going to have to pick up the mantle for Pat Spencer. Lindley got the 7, so he got to wear the coveted number. I still think Aidan Olmstead is their best player overall, and what needed to happen last year all year was they needed to play well together. They didn't really start gelling totally until towards the end of the season. That playoff run, they both played excellent. So Kevin Lindley, more of an off-ball guy, but he can mix it up where he has to. We look at his stats last year, 42-8. It's the epitome of being an off-ball guy. But look at that shooting percentage, 43.3% shooting, 67% on cage, only turned the ball over 20 times overall. So Lindley is going to be a force for Loyola. He's back as a graduate student, so that's going to be bonkers. Aidan Olmstead, same thing. Local guy here, Section 4 guy, Corning painted post, so I'm a big fan of Olmstead. I didn't know he even went to Corning until last season, actually. But anyway, Olmstead, one of their best Dodgers. Actually, right now, he probably is their best Dodger. You see what he did last year, 31-29. So this is a very good, kind of 1-2 punch. You can't call them Batman and Robin. They're too equal and they're too dependent on each other overall. You put one of them on any team, they're going to do well, but these guys play really good lacrosse together. Shooting percentage was way too low. This kid could have put up a bunch more points if he could have just put more rocks past the goalkeepers. 50% on cage, not good enough. 27% past the keepers, that's not good enough either. Turned the ball over a bunch, but he was the main facilitator on offense for them, so I'm not that upset about that number there. A little over 2 a game. But he was putting up, more than 2 points a game, getting those back. So overall, expect Olmstead to be big. Another graduate student, another big deal. And another guy going to be key, Bailey Savio. I thought he was going to be one of the best face-off guys in the country last year. That did not play out. You look at the season he had in 2020 and how he started. 68.7%. I thought that type of success was going to carry into 2021. It did not. He goes for 51.7% of the draws in 2021. That hurt Loyola greatly at times, but if he can be better in his 5th year as a graduate student, like all 4 of these guys I've talked about for Loyola are all graduate students. If he can be better as a graduate student, I mean, hell, Loyola is, once again, as I sit here and I just kind of go through my paces and try to figure out who's coming back, figure out who are the guys that I'm going to be talking about. A boatload of these guys are graduate students, obviously, and 5th-year guys. So that's huge for the D1 landscape. It's huge for what we're going to get to see in terms of the product on the field out of all these teams, but it's very difficult to figure out who the hell to talk about and what to do. So That is it for this episode, apparently. One other thing that I thought was cool, and then I'll talk about a little bit more here next week, is the high school landscape and seeing that these high school kids and some of these young college kids that are coming into college are going to be able to start getting paid for their likeness. So I'm going to try to put together a little bit of a chat surrounding the high school lacrosse players that are going to, that are kind of cashing in here, fronted by Spallina and company. So that is it. I see I've been rambling for 34 minutes. The goal here moving forward and why I'm doing the show in this way is, especially through the rest of this off season, I'm probably going to get into live streaming Sunday mornings and live streaming this episode, but I want to get some practice under my belt, rambling, prepping it, figuring out how I want it to flow and all of that crap. So I missed last week because we got some construction and crap like that going on, but I will be back again next weekend, probably right from this desk here, and we'll do the same thing. We're just going to keep talking about guys that are coming back, teams that I'm excited about, guys that are going to, see what freshmen maybe we think are going to make a big impact on their teams and things. So we'll just keep doing what we do. That is it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, all that crap. You can go to LaxFactor.com, get yourself some swag, t-shirts, and everything like that to help support the channel. And that is it. I'll be back next week. Hoost is out.